Introduce our chair and panelist. Our chair, Sri Ajay Naranja, was a member of the Indian Administrative Service 1982 batch. Currently, he is a member of the Board of Governors of the Institute of Economic Growth, Delhi. He served in different capacities in the Government of India and the Government of Manipur in a distinguished career spanning 37 years. He has worked closely with the highest decision-making levels like Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Cabinet, Prime Minister's Office, Cabinet Secretary, and secretaries of all the ministries and the Department of the Government of India on matters spanning of public policy and governance. He also served as a Deputy Election Commissioner in the Election Commission of India. He has a unique distinction of serving three Finance Commission. He was the Secretary of the 14th Finance Commission and then served as a member of the 15th Finance Commission. He also served as a member for some time on the 16th Finance Commission. We warmly welcome you to this seminar, sir. Next, we have our esteemed panelists. Let me introduce Dr. Ashok Kumar Lahiri. He is an economist and policy maker, currently serving as a member of the 15th Finance Commission and as a member of the West Bengal Legislative Assembly. He previously served as a chief economic advisor to the Government of India and had held several prominent academic and institutional roles, including reader at the Delhi School of Economics and director of the NIPFP. Dr. Lahiri has also worked internationally as Executive Director at the Asian Development Bank and as a consultant and senior economist with the World Bank and the IMF. His research spanned macroeconomics, public finance, and electoral politics, with publications in both academic and policy-oriented platforms. We all warmly welcome you to this session, sir. Professor K.R. Kavita Rao is the director of the NIPFP, a leading Indian think tank in the public economics. Since assuming office in June 2022, she has guided research on fiscal federalism, taxation and state-led development, a recognized expert on India's indirect tax system. She contributed significantly to the transition from VAT to GST and to its design framework. Her work spans on the center-state fiscal relations, the effectiveness of the tax policy, compliance behavior, and state-level debt sustainability. We warmly welcome to this seminar, ma'am. Professor Vinod Vyasulu, a leading development economist and the founder and the first director of the Center for Budget and Policy Studies, Bengaluru, whose work has played a pivotal role in shaping policy-oriented research and institutions building in India. A member of the founding generation of the faculty at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, he contributed significantly to the intellectual and the pedagogical foundations, particularly by integrating development concerns into management education. He later served as the director of the Institute of Public Enterprise, Hyderabad. With nearly 2 decades of teaching experience across universities in India and abroad, his academic career is complemented by extensive engagement with international organizations, including ILO, World Bank, and UNDP, as well as bilateral agencies, public and private institutions. We warmly welcome you to this seminar, sir. Shri R. Mohan is a former Indian Revenue Service Officer and Income Tax Commissioner who served as a private secretary to the Chief Minister of Kerala. With a strong academic and policy-oriented background, his primary area of interest is public finance. He has contributed extensively to the policy discussions and has authored several articles on fiscal federalism, finance commission, state finances, revenue mobilization, devolution of funds, and taxation. He is the author of the book titled Story of Schisms and Isms, Kerala from the twilight of monarchy to the present, which examines Kerala's political and social cultural evolution and offers valuable insights into the state's historical trajectory. We warmly welcome you to this seminar, sir. Over to the chair. Thank
you. Dr. Joseph, Director of GIFT, distinguished panelists and very, very distinguished experts who have gathered from all over the country, who are present here, as well as many who are online participating in this seminar. I'm really privileged to be here and chairing a session where one of the speakers happens to be somebody I consider to be my guru. He was co-member in the 15th Finance Commission, Dr. Ashok Lahiri. And we have many, many other distinguished persons here from whom I have learned a lot in my career as well as in my various assignments, especially in recent times. The previous 2 sessions have covered a lot of ground in terms of the discussions that had taken place, the opening session and the comments, the observations which Dr. Hasib Drabu made, and then subsequently in the second session on fiscal consolidation, we have covered almost all the primary tasks of the Finance Commission, which is vertical devolution, horizontal devolution, and then local body grants, grants in aid, and so on and so forth. So this being a specialized session sort of on vertical devolution, I suppose we'll confine ourselves more to the vertical devolution part of it and leave horizontal, etc., for the next session, which has equally fascinating and promising, which would be equally fascinating and promising for all of us. I have been asked to give some opening comments. I'll just give some read out couple of passages from the previous four finance commissions as to how they approached vertical devolution, just to do some ground setting for it. Uh, the 12th FC, to quote them, says, while determining the share of states in the divisible pool of central taxes, it is necessary to look at the level of overall transfers relative to the center's gross revenue receipts, the relative balance between tax devolution and grants, and feasible redistribution that can be undertaken in the inter se share of states in the tax devolution. So, gross revenue resources is what becomes a benchmark for them. The 13th says almost the same thing, but obviously in a slightly different language. It says, after due consideration of the views of the center and the states, we are of the opinion that vertical devolution should be informed by revenue raising capacity of the center as well as the emerging pressures of expenditure commitments. And the states, revenue raising capacity of the center and the states, as well as the emerging pressures of their expenditure commitments. So, mind you, they have a term of reference which calls upon them to make special consideration for the finance for financing the plan, gross fiscal support to the plan, which was part of the TOR, maybe brought in for the first time. The 14th FC is, I'll read a little more from them in the sense that it's that FC from where the entire compositional change takes place. So what they say is that in the context of center and states, there's a long passage preceding that, but effectively it says about bringing there's a lot of vertical imbalance, and then we have to bring some degree of balance in between the center and the states. It says in this context, we have examined three factors: the spirit of the constitutional provisions, the concerns about fiscal space expressed by the states and the union, and the need for clarity in the respective functional and expenditure responsibilities of the union and the states in the interest of sound federal principles, federal relations. It goes on to add, and this is 42% being explained in their language. A compositional shift in transfers from grants to tax devolution is desirable for two reasons. First, it does not impose an additional fiscal burden on the union government. Second, an increase in the tax devolution would enhance the share of unconditional transfers to the states. We have factored in four important considerations. Number one, states not being entitled to the growing share of cess and surcharges in the revenues of the union. Two, the importance of increasing the share of tax devolution in total transfers. Three, an aggregate view of revenue expenditure needs of the states without plan and non-plan distinction. And finally, the space available with the union government. Again, the larger fiscal space is what they are talking about. The 15th FC is slightly more specific, where they say our view on the future contours of the vertical devolution of resources between union and states is to share gross revenue receipts similarly at about equal ratio between union and the states, while assuming no further decline in the divisible pool as proportion of gross revenue receipts. This balance, though, has been achieved through 41% of the divisible pool being devolved to 28 states and the balance devolution taking place through various forms of finance commission and non-finance commission transfer mechanisms. Let us see what 16th FC says. The Commission has done its assessment of vertical resource imbalance in the light of these shifts in revenue resources. They do a long, detailed analysis of the share of the state, center, and so on and so forth over last 70 years. The union's revenue expenditures allow us to calculate the revenue resources available from the union for devolution to the states. In parallel, the estimated revenue expenditure of states allows us to calculate the additional revenue resources required by the states. Our recommendation on vertical devolution on waste is based on the comparison of these available and required revenue resource estimates. To bridge any positive gap between required and available resources, we assess the room for further revenue growth through increased tax effort and expenditure savings through greater efficiency in spending at both levels of government. We then reworked the available and required revenue resources and repeated the exercise until an acceptable balance was achieved. The shares in the divisible pool were chosen in line with this balance. I'm confused, but I leave it to the others, to the experts, to comment on it. We have a slight reordering of, with these opening remarks, I'll just request the panelists. There's a slight reordering. I'll start with Dr. Kavita Rao because Professor Ashok Lahiri has requested that he speak at the end, and given my deference for him, I bow to it and I will put him in the end at the end of the other speakers. Followed by Dr. Vinod, Professor Vinod Vyasulu, and then Mr. R. Mohan, and we will have Dr. Lahiri. May I request all the speakers to be brief, about 15 minutes each, then we can have a lot of people are waiting for discussion to take place. So there'll be a lot of time left for discussions amongst the young and experienced both. So Dr. Kavita Rao, we begin with you. She's online.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this invite. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'll just 3 or 4 slides, which I thought will set a little context for what I'm trying to say. So I'll just share the slides. Give me a minute. Are my slides visible?
Yeah, visible.
Okay. Okay. So basically,
can you put it on slideshow, please?
Yeah.
That will give us a better view.
Is it now showing a slideshow?
Yes, now it's fine.
Okay. So when I was asked to speak about vertical devolution, I was a little flummoxed, partly because the Finance Commission's recommendations sort of reiterate the recommendations, in effect, the concluding recommendation for the 14th and the 15th FC by suggesting a 41% share for states in devolution. So where is the question and where is the issue? So I'm trying to identify for myself a couple of questions that I think would have been interesting for the Finance Commission to incorporate in how they would look at what devolution really means. If one thinks of devolution as a means of augmenting fiscal space for states for autonomous decision making on expenditure priorities, then we would like to understand if the 41% is really becoming 41% for the states, augmented, revenue space, and whether this entire space is available to the states to do to focus on their individual expenditure priorities. To see how devolution and resources available to states have evolved, two major issues which have been spoken about at length at various points are what I'd like to focus on. The first is the impact of increase in cesses and surcharges, and the second is the impact of changes in the state's share in centrally sponsored schemes. The first one, as Mr. Jha just mentioned, has been a recurring theme for a long time, even pre 2014, pre 14th Finance Commission, and it would be useful to see how it has evolved. And the Finance Commission does mention this issue, and so sorry. Okay, so the panel on the left is showing us the orange line shows you the devolution. The vertical blue line is separating the 14th and the 15th FC award periods. And the green line shows you the share of cesses and surcharges. And what is evident is when cesses and surcharges are going up, the share of the states is going down, to be expected, because cesses and surcharges are not shared. The share of cesses and surcharges, it may be noted, increases till 2021, and thereafter it sort of moderates. It doesn't come down to the 2014 level yet, but it is lower than what was observed in 2020, which was over 15%. This number excludes the cesses and surcharges introduced as GST compensation. Since that cess was meant to compensate states for loss of revenue from GST, it doesn't constitute an additionality for the union, and therefore I sort of excluded it from this slide to understand fiscal space. So evidently, this remains a contentious issue, since they account for, even now, they account for about 10%, cesses account for about 10% of gross tax revenue of the union government. And correspondingly, the share of the states is about 35% of gross tax revenues, even though the allocated share is 41%. Turning to the other element, then what does aggregate transfers to states look like? The green line again is presenting share of states in gross tax revenue, as in all transfers made to states. As can be seen, this line is not actually dropping as much. So the scale for the former is on the left side. The scale for non-finance commission transfers is on the right side. And this is pretty much driven by non-finance commission transfers. There's a huge surge in 2021, and thereafter it remains at a higher level. During the award period of the 14th FC, the total transfers to states remained stable at about 57%. In subsequent years, there's a surge, co-terminus with the COVID shock, followed by a decline to come back to 57%. Now, if we look at what happens, why is CSS of concern to us? For two reasons. CSS, centrally sponsored schemes, have been a mechanism through which the union has been providing support to the states to undertake a range of activities that the union deems of importance for nation building, let's call it. But the caveat in all of the story is that the states are expected to contribute a certain percentage of the total allocation or total expenditures incurred under CSS. If you look at the ratio of CSS to GTR, it was about 4.5% in 2011-12. But by 15-16, it increases to 13%, and it reached a peak of 20% in 2021. Thereafter, there is some moderation. So what is the role that, what is the impact on states' own resources? CSS, the state's contribution to the CSS um, has been altered over the years. In the pre-2015 period, a number of the schemes had the states contributing about 10%. In the subsequent periods, the state contribution of the major states has been increased to about 40% in a number of schemes. So then if we look at what the net devolution to the states post CSS preemption is concerned, then what do the numbers look like? How can we do this exercise? In a conference that we did for the 16th FC, two of my colleagues presented a paper which presents some average shares of states in CSS for about 18 states for which the data is available, and the ratio turns out to be about 34% during the period 2017-18 to 22-23. If you assume this number for the entire period, what you get is the graph on the right, on the left. Gross devolution is shown as the orange line, whereas net of CSS, the preemption of the CSS, the rates go down significantly. The 2021 number is less than 20%. It is 19%. If you look at 2015-16, it is over 25%, about 26%. So it's nowhere near the 40% that we are aiming for, or the finance commissions are recommending. If a similar adjustment were to be done for 2011-12, that is assuming the 10% that being state share, the tax share or devolution net of CSS would be 28%. So what in effect seems to have happened is, while the 14th FC attempted to raise the unpreempted free autonomous component of receipts available to the states, in effect we have now come to a scenario where the CSS and the cess effectively reduce the share of states, the free resources available to the states to somewhere between 25 and 30%. And in the few years in between, it drops below 25% as well. The most recent change in the CSS framework is the introduction of VBG Ramji. It's one more case where the formula has been restructured, where the states now are expected to bear a larger share of the total expenditure in this program. The Finance Commission, in its recommendations on grants in aid, also perhaps places some pressure on the state governments to increase or augment their transfers to local bodies. Once again, a preemption on the available resources to the union government, to the state governments, given the available allocations. So then it is often argued that the significant increase in share of states following the recommendation of the 14th FC created an environment which triggered a change in the structure of financial arrangements of Government of India. We can think of it as a behavioral change. The important or interesting question to ask would be, could the FC have reset these behavioral triggers? Should the FC have attempted to reset, and could the FC have attempted to reset these behavioral changes? So, two questions, therefore. Would a cap on the extent of revenues raised from cesses and surcharge have been suggested? This could take the form of a straightforward cap And since most Finance Commission reports are recommendations which the Union government can choose to accept or not, the not having a recommendation on this front seems to be a missed opportunity. The alternative could be to have a limit on cesses and surcharges beyond which the receipts could be sort of absorbed back into the shareable pool. It could have required, it might have required changes in how we do things, maybe even a constitutional amendment. But the issue not being raised is perhaps a larger concern in how we see responses to government's behavioral changes. The second one, the second option, the second question to raise is how much of the resources that are available to states should be preempted or can be preempted by CSS-like schemes. In the past, there has been a lot of discussion on whether we can consolidate CSS, reduce CSS, restructure CSS, but I don't think we've had much success in pushing forward those reforms. So is it time to start asking a question on how the extent of resources that should be preempted by CSS-like schemes, which reduce the amount of resources the states have available to undertake their own independent expenditure priorities. Leaving the share of states unchanged in the light of the above seems sort of inadequate. Would an increased share have meant some further behavioral changes? It's a question that we cannot explore at this moment. But leaving it at 14% accepts the status quo of all the preemptions and all the bylaws that have been adopted. So that is what I thought I'd share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You brought out very significant issues. I'm sure we'll be able to discuss it in detail. Now I'll call upon Professor Vinod Vyasalu for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me thank GIFT for this invitation and opportunity to speak on this subject, and also to meet a lot of old friends after a very long time. Hello, Ashok. Now, we've been talking about vertical devolution and a great deal has been said. But in the morning session, I heard terms saying that, look, now 41% seems to be the new norm. And I wondered why. Why should we take it as the new norm? If we go back into the early Finance Commission, second, third, and so on, the approach that they took was to look at the constitutional assignment of responsibilities. What the union was supposed to do, what the states were supposed to do. Said, okay, you got to look after communications, railways, defense, foreign policy, etc., and make some kind of a calculation as to what that would require. But this was also the time when India was in the planning process, the planning era. And the Mahalanobis strategy required that huge investment be made in new greenfield plants, your HMTs and your BHEL and all the rest of them. So the government interacted with those finance commissions, and it was agreed that the center should have resources, because these companies would be set up as public sector limited companies with 100% shareholding by the President of India. They were national entities. And therefore, it was essential if that strategy was to succeed. And please remember that this also happened in the fact that the assumed finances from the sterling balances just disappeared. India didn't get that. There was a crisis because of that. So at that time, it was not a divisible pool. It was different taxes, parts of which percentages were assigned and so on. But the net result was there was an agreement that the center needed a larger share in order to be able to invest in and The center did invest. I mean, we did get BHL, ISRO, and ONGC and all the rest of them. So to that extent, it was something that was nationally agreed. The states didn't object. And that thing continued. But what then happened was that the last public sector unit of this type to be set up was NALCO in 1979, the National Aluminium in Odisha. After that, no greenfields central public sector unit has been set up, though few public sector units have been set up. Now, the point was at that point in time, the larger resource of union, which once would have gone into public, were available. And politically, these got transformed into central schemes. In the beginning, it was central schemes, and then it got innovated into centrally sponsored schemes. So the point I'm making is that a large share for the union sort of got embedded into the system as something acceptable. If we go further into this, the question arises that in the light of experience of the central and central sponsored schemes, much of which we heard today, which limit the freedom of the state and of an elected state government to act according to its priorities, there is a democratic issue that comes up here. Should this continue? If this is not to continue, what is the way out of it? One way out of it is to revisit the percentages. We can't take 41% as the norm. You go back to the drawing board and start calculating. The other way of doing it is to say, even if it remains, the size of the cake has to improve. Rather than be a plain vanilla cake, you need a fruit cake or a chocolate cake, and something has to be done. And is anything like that possible? Now, here I would like to refer to Article 283 BB and C, which say that they're needed to augment the consolidated fund of the states to supplement the resources of panchayats, municipalities on the basis of State Finance Commission recommendations. Now, Article 280 is a separate article from the other articles we've done. If this Finance Commission is to work on this, and this doesn't explicitly refer to tax resources, are there other resources with the union? So I want to raise a few questions for discussion here. One is that the nation has invested in all these public sector units. They're now paying dividends. In fact, companies like BHL are part of the Sensex. So the dividends that are paid by the central sector units are national resources. Should they or should they not be added to the divisible pool? So this is something that I think we should discuss. It's a way of augmenting the divisible pool. And just as a way of reference, in 1924-25, the Union of India received 74,000 crores of rupees as PSU dividends. Now, 74,000 crores is a lot of money. Added to the divisible pool, it could make a difference. In the same way, the government of India has been selling off units, public sector units, the proceeds of either the sale, disinvestment, or equity sale, whatever it is. Now, in the financial year 25, the Indian government raised 8,625 crores as disinvestment receipts, primarily through sale of minority stakes. Now, these are national assets. Could this also not be added to the divisible pool? Or if you don't want to add, leave the divisible pool as it is. These new resources can then become a separate fund for meeting the requirements of Article 283 BB and C. This is something to be discussed. I don't know the answers to this, but I thought that this is something that we should talk about and discuss. The larger question that all this raises, one more point. The Reserve Bank of India has been paying dividends, so-called profits. Now, in the last year, it was 2.68 lakh crores that was paid to the central government in the year 24-25. This constitutes a significant increase from the previous year, which was 2.11 lakh crore. And it says here that this is used to narrow the fiscal deficit of the union government. And laudable aim, no doubt, but is it the most important aim? So if the profits of the Reserve Bank of India are supposed to accrue to the Republic of India and not to the Union of India necessarily. Now, all these amounts are significant amounts to increase the divisible pool. So we go from vanilla cake to chocolate cake. So I think that there is a reason to examine all this. And in particular, given all that we have heard about the central and central sponsored schemes, uh, should we continue with them or should we go on with what Hasib Rabu said in the morning? The centrally sponsored schemes are an excellent example of coercive federalism. And what we want is not coercive, but cooperative federalism. So I raise these issues here and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Um, we have Mr. R. Mohan, next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, sir, esteemed audience, online and offline, dear students. Almost everything has been said. I have a few points to make here. We are discussing vertical and horizontal devolution separately. I mean, fairly so that the division is neat here, but in the economic literature, as far as I have seen, the division is not very neat because vertical and horizontal devolution have their own interlinkages, and he's the author of a paper which had tried to estimate the unit cost and then horizontal devolution, Indian economic literature. And there are other papers also. Richard M. Bird in Bird and Tarasov 2002 had said that when the gap is closed with the richest subnational unit or the state or the province, vertical gap is closed. Then what is remaining is the what we call is a horizontal gap. So it is all a very overlapping situation, but sessions are neatly divided. Congrats to GIFT. Anyway, now coming to 4-5 points which I want to make. When one goes through Granville Austin's book, Constitution, Cornerstone of a Nation, who has commented exhaustively on the Constituent Assembly debates, the division or how a divisible pool was arrived at was not a simple question at that time. I mean, not that like emergency provisions, they were debated too much, but there was heavy debate whether a prescribed share should be written into the constitution. Naliniranjan Sarkar committee wanted a prescribed share to be written into the constitution. I think 60%. At that time, when whatever is the state autonomy said, koi 60, koi should not be 75%. But finally, it was not done. So it was the prescribed share was left to an expert body, Finance Commission, and to say it is commendable that despite the rumors and other news which came that there were efforts to reduce the share, influence the Finance Commission to reduce the share. From 1952, the first Finance Commission down till date, not a single union government has altered the share recommended by the Finance Commission. Under Article 281, I think union can if they want, because it's a recommendation. It's not an award kind of a thing binding, but not a single union government has done it. So that is one federal feature of the Finance Commission. Now, the constitutions is India is overlaid with unitary features. In emergency time, it becomes substantially unitary and with a few federal features left. And as Supreme Court said, the union can travel union is an amphibian which can travel in unitary and federal plane. But the language of Article 283 is totally federal in nature. It talks of distribution between the union and states of the net proceeds of tax. So and so I don't read. And allocation between the state. It doesn't talk of somebody sitting at the top and vertically devolving something and that's being horizontally devolved. It is the economic literature in India and abroad that has made the discussion totally unfederal. This as a layman, my grievance against the economists and eminent people who have been discussing. I mean, this is a problem because when Constitution talks of distribution, we talk of devolution. Devolution, somebody sitting at the top gives you something. I mean, states are not below the state, local governments are not below the union. So that is to the fiscal linguistics part. Now, vertical devolution, I'm not treading into horizontal devolution because again, this kind of, it should be need-based and somewhat incentive-based. We have had incentive criteria, mix of need-based criteria, etc., etc. Coming to the 16th FC report, to be brief, it has an elaborate discussion on the resources left or the balance, the residue left with the union after FC transfers, non-FC transfers, and all sorts of transfers, finally says that it is 67-33. The ratio is 67-33 and union's resources are stressed. That is the language that's the meaning. And finally said to help the union, a grand bargain finally has to be struck between the union and the state so that surcharges and cesses will be brought down to a reasonable level, and then comes the states can agree for a smaller share of the divisible pool. This is the concluding paragraph 7.67 of the 16th FC report. Now, a neutral arbiter, is it warranted? It's my question, because now coming to that, that's the question. Now, the point is, why 41%? 41% is welcome, not welcome, neutral. I mean, it can be anything. But there is something called the vertical fiscal imbalance. If we go in economic literature, there are attempts to measure it. I mean, you can have a different measurement if you want. 1 minus the own revenue of a subnational unit divided by the own expenditure. Now, own expenditure, as Dr. Kavita Rao has said, is quite pressed, because more you add to the CSS, the more will be the own revenue expenditure pressed, because CSS is the mandatory expenditure. Then your vertical fiscal imbalance will come down and you can say, this is a weird thing. Arithmetically, if you raise the CSS, you can say that my devolution can be less. Another way in computation. But the 16th FC, unfortunately, has forgotten to factor in the vertical fiscal imbalances arising out of GST rate apportionment at 50:50 instead of 60:40, which was demanded. It could be right or wrong. Number two, increase in the share of most of the CSS from 25 to 40%. Number three, as the 16th FC itself says, the shrinking percentage of net proceeds as a share of gross tax revenue of the union. Now, the point is, had with Finance Commission with its vast data resources at its disposal, had it attempted to measure a vertical fiscal imbalance gap or vertical fiscal gap, as Richard Byrd calls it and many other people call it, then there could have been some justification for 41 or 40 or 39 or 45%. Now, a grand bargain has to be struck. How a grand bargain is struck between the union and the subnational units? 10th Finance Commission made a recommendation that there should be a constitution amendment making all net proceeds of all taxes part of the divisible pool, and they recommended a static share of 26%, but that was not accepted. But the 80th Constitution Amendment substantially made all taxes, actually made all taxes shareable by deleting Article 272, where central excise was optionally shareable. Now, this 16th FC has not proceeded to, it is their choice, it's my criticism, they have not proceeded to suggest a typical constitutional amendment. I mean, 9th Finance Commission of which he was part and all, they have done elaborate constitutional discussions on Article 282 versus now those discussions become irrelevant after the Bhim Singh's judgment. But 16th FC has not even treaded into that area. This is the problem. Vertical fiscal imbalance without measuring it, adequacy or inadequacy of 41% is anybody's guess. This is what has happened. Now, I have a final question which is connected to vertical fiscal imbalance. The roadmap to fiscal consolidation has been elaborately laid by the 16th FC. No harm. But I have a question which beckons an answer from constitutional lawyers in India, the political masters, the chief ministers of states, none of whom either belonging to the ruling party or the opposition party have not raised even a whisper till date. It is unfortunate. Article 283D, any other matter referred to the commission by the president in the interests of sound finance. This is the terms of reference which enables the finance commission to recommend a roadmap to fiscal consolidation, saying that 3% of FD, 0.5%, etc. I mean, all sorts of things can be said. But the short and sweet TOR given to the 16th Finance Commission has not included Article 283D. Article 280A to C. 16th Finance Commission got the best ever TOR, I think, after the KC Niyogi Commission, because constitution of this sense, the population of this census should be used. No mandate at all. The Constitution's Article 283A to C has been extracted. Distribution of resources to the states, between the states, principles governing grants in aid, I mean, they have not been done, but some discussion has been there. Since it's horizontal part, I am not going into that. Panchayats, municipalities, etc., etc. Now, coming to this, there is no presidential TOR mandate to recommend a roadmap for fiscal consolidation, but an elaborate chapter has been written on that. I mean, the chapter is welcome. The conditions could be meritorious. I am not going into, I am not arguing for non-fiscal consolidation or fiscal anarchy. Do not mistake for that. But technically, the constitutional question, whether an FC can make a recommendation, and Union has partly accepted it without a presidential TOR. This, I think, in the history of finance commissions, this stands out as a constitutional question which has not been raised by not a single constitutional lawyer, nor a single state government, nor a single political party. This is where the discussion on federal and fiscal and finance commission stand today. I am not going into the elaborate academic details which economists and researchers here can do. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Short and crisp. Very well said. We have the last speaker for the day before we break into question answer, Dr. Ashok Lahiri. He's online.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am grateful for this honor that I've got of participating virtually. Of course, it's a loss for me that I couldn't visit God's own country, my favorite state, for this conference. But it was a privilege to listen to the earlier panelists. I'll raise 4 or 5 points. One, what I've learned is that devolution is different from decentralization. Devolution is something like a right, whereas decentralization you can do at your behest. You want to give me some money, you can decentralize. Now, when you add up all these numbers, like how much is going from the center, the union, in the form of central schemes or centrally sponsored schemes, are these devolution really? Or are these decentralization? So that question is, I think we skip at times. This 41% is devolution. While calculating, you calculate the other things and add it up and say it's higher. I do not think, at least, that it's the right way to go. Second is the question of the subsidiarity principle. We often talk about it, that it should be devolved to the lowest level. But are we generally very shy of facing the issue that are there some vulnerabilities, sensibilities, where you cannot actually go all the way to subsidiarity principle? Malayalis in Kerala should have a right to say how much is going to be spent on education in Bihar. Similarly, a Punjabi in Punjab should have a right to say how much should be spent on education in West Bengal. So if you do that, then you have some scope for central schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. Whether you're going overboard or whether you're doing too little is a different question. Now here, the problem, Kavita brought out this issue that in CSS, the state's contribution are being reduced. I think that's natural. Why do I say it natural? You want to get the maximum mileage of all the centrally sponsored schemes. So whatever money you have, if you increase the state's share, you can go a little further. Whether it's really seducing the states to do what you want by this indirect means, I think Ajay, our chairman, and we used to talk about a term in the 15th Finance Commission, which you cannot say in public. Now, here, the issue comes about also what we have seen recently in terms of what some people consider excessive expenditure on welfare measures. Because if you're considering vertical devolution, you have to think about in some way or the other, is the money being spent by the union government better or by the state governments better? That's a question that needs to be answered. That are we safer to give more money with this union government, or are we safer to give more money to the state governments? As you know, for politicians, which I am now, the million-dollar question is how to stay alive. Elections have to be won. And to win elections, every politician will promise the world to get the votes. Now here, I come to one issue, which I don't know where I read, but I think 16th Finance Commission has also said it, that roughly in the constitutional framework, roughly 2/3 of the expenditure are incurred by the state governments and 1/3 by the center. In terms of revenues, on the other hand, 2/3 come to the center and 1/3 goes to the states. So if you want to maintain fiscal balance at both levels, you don't need rocket science to roughly calculate that you need half the revenues of the state central government to go to the states, because 2/3 have to be reduced to 1/3 and 1/3 has to be raised to 2/3. Now here, 41% comes pretty close, but not quite. So here, do we need, it's a bigger question, that the constitutional assignment of functions and whatever is in the concurrent list, that's a sort of hazy area, do we need to revisit it? But if this 2/3, 1/3 anomaly is going to continue, then for fiscal balance at both levels, we come close to 50%. Maybe slightly less if you want to consider decentralized funds as part of devolution or calculating how much you should devolve. Now here, Kavita raised a very fundamental issue of putting some restriction on cesses. See, the Brits continue with an unwritten constitution. Are we going to write down everything, or will there be some norms which governments and politicians will abide by? Cesses, I believe, is an inalienable right of the sovereign. If there is a war tomorrow, you can't say, no, you can't impose a cess. But on the other hand, you can't be imposing cess every Monday in the year. So what kind of restrictions we can put on the cess? I mean, cess to me is an emergency measure. It's not a day-to-day measure that you can invoke. So I'm in a quandary whether cesses should be limited or we should appeal to the powers that be that please don't use it excessively. Vinod, my old friend whom I'm seeing after a long time, he has suggested that RBI's profits, which the RBI gives to the central government, and dividends from central public sector units, as well as privatization receipts, should also be brought in under the Finance Commission's purview, or at least taken into account when you talk about the center's receipts. But I thought we are talking of only devolution of taxable resources, not non-tax revenues. These are non-tax revenues. Maybe we should, I don't know. So the burden of my song is that 16th Finance Commission, I've just browsed through the report. I haven't gone through the report carefully. These are some of the questions they could have enlightened us on, but those don't seem to have been covered. Thank you very much again for allowing me. I'm out of the ring now. As you know, I'm a politician now. But thank you for allowing me to join your session and benefit a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So we are left with good time now for a discussion. And I open the floor for questions. Please mention the person you want to address in your question. And Dr. Kavita Rao and Dr. Ashok Lahiri are online. And Professor Vinod and Mr. Mohan, yeah, they are here. Plus, there are other experts. They will also enlighten us. So, yes, sir. Dr. Mandal.
I have a question to ask to Kavita later, but first of all, Dr. Mohan, I wanted to get some clarification from you. Uh, you seemed unhappy with this use of the term devolution, that something sitting on top, coming down, and so on. Implicit in that, are you suggesting that the central government is the first among equals? My understanding of constitution is that we have what is called a quasi-federal constitution, where we have three tiers of government, and indeed the central government is sitting on top. And therefore, if you agree with that, then devolution is an appropriate term, just as you send it further down to, local governments, 73rd, 70th amendment, but of course it's been left to the states, what they actually devolve. So that's the question I just want to clarify. The question I had for you, Kavita, you were mentioning the impact of, things like this cesses and surcharges, which have been much discussed, and also centrally sponsored schemes, which others have also mentioned, on the size of the shareable pool. Unless I missed something, you did not go into this fairly dramatic change that we had with the rolling out of GST on the resources of the taxable resources, center and state government, so on. Actually, in his inaugural address, Hasib Dabu, you may not have been there, made a lot of it, and he said that this is a sea change which finance commissions have to take into account. And I do remember this was a big problem when the 15th Finance Commission was deliberating. The GST Council already existed, but they had not given their decision on taxes and all that. So they were in a real quandary. But anyway, I wanted your view on whether that should be taken into account or not, and if so, how. Thank you.
Yes. We can take a few questions and then they'll respond, and then another second.
Respected Chairman, I have 2 points to raise. You see, as a student of political science, I feel that this is neither on devolution court and this is either on decentralization. I feel that this is something sharing of the resources. We have a different kind of meaning and connotation as far as when you use the word devolution and the word decentralization. As far as Professor Vinod Basuru's very interesting issues that there, and that has to be seriously discussed. I also appreciate that point. It also should have come under the divisible pool. Thank you.
Yes.
It is related to devolution and decentralization only. So the thing is that can we actually dissociate these two or not? Because devolution, it plays an important role for decentralization, and how we are actually doing the devolution, it has a lot of role to play into the decentralization. So can we actually, we cannot differentiate, I mean, we cannot separate them, because they're closely associated. So that is
Made a
it is yes, because
question to Dr. Lahiri.
because Dr. Lahiri actually raised this point. I mean, whether we can use this term together, devolution and decentralization. So this is I just wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pinaki?
Sir, I had a couple of observations on the vertical devolution. Not a question to a particular panelist. The first issue with regard to vertical devolution is the GST apportionment on the 50-50 basis. So if we really consider pre-GST tax base, the tax base that was merged before GST, it was 60% for the states and 60%, 40% for the union. And now with the 50-50 sharing of base, the vertical devolution has gone up. What is the impact of that? And this has happened after the 14th Finance Commission's recommendation was implemented. That was at 42%. So what is the impact of this 40-40, 50-50 devolution of 50-50 apportionment of GST tax base, and its impact on vertical imbalance is not known. So this was not done by the 15th Finance Commission. The 16th Finance Commission hasn't done any assessment. So this is one issue. So vertical devolution certainly will be higher than where it was when 14th Finance Commission recommended it at 42%. Second issue is the CSS contribution.
Higher or lower?
Vertical devolution will be much, vertical imbalance will be much higher. Yeah. Yeah, but second issue is CSS contribution on 60-40 basis. It was earlier lower. So naturally a part of the untied tax base has gone. So that would again increase the vertical fiscal imbalance. If we have to continue the existing, if we want to continue the level of imbalance that was there when the 14th Finance Commission report was recommended, and the kind of changes that has happened after the report of the 14th Finance Commission was implemented. An issue we don't talk about is the issue of NCA going away, which was around 6% of the divisible pool before the 14th Finance Commission recommendation was implemented, and then CSS contribution going up. Actually, in effect, the NCA amount has become much lower. If the earlier system continued and 60-40 CSS ratio was continued, the NCA would have been much lower because states had to make more contribution for the CSS. So this also increases the vertical fiscal imbalance. And last issue that I wanted to highlight, the point that Dr. Vaslu made about the fiscal resources which are not there, but now it is there, like 2G, very high dividend from RBI. This is also giving excess fiscal space to the center. In turn, they are introducing a lot of schemes. In 2015-16, number of centrally sponsored schemes were 28. Now the number of centrally sponsored schemes have increased to around 50. So actually it is giving more fiscal space to the state center, and states have to absorb these schemes, and their fiscal space is declining. So it is not only about vertical devolution, this is also about excess fiscal space at the union level, reducing fiscal autonomy of the states. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, after this, we'll ask the speakers to.
In fact, I wanted to raise this point in the morning, but this is quite relevant in the context of the present panel also. This is about revenue deficit. Now that there is no room for revenue deficit grant, what will happen if a state is continuously facing revenue deficit? That's quite possible given the worsening of the vertical imbalance. And there can be unforeseen events also. Therefore, if a state or a group of states, if they fall into persistent, continuous structural revenue deficit crisis, what is there and how the system will solve it? Because this escape route is not there. So what should they do? Will the center give some additional loan space? Or, I'm just wondering, if such a situation arises, what will we do?
Okay, then let's take some responses and then we'll come back to questions again. We can take it in the, if somebody can read out or you can read out, Dr. Kiran, later after this round of responses.
It's not chat box, some audience have raised hand.
Okay, so we'll have one round of responses and then we'll come back to them. Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Mohan, first.
I'm not giving a definite answer because I'm incapable of that. I'm sharing some more doubts again. Our constitution has been termed by and large quasi-federal, Katsi, Casey, where, and this thing. But there is an equally strong dispute to the word quasi-federal by Charles Henry Alexandrovich, who was heading the political science department in the Madras University. He said that it is non-federal only during emergencies and it springs back to the federal shape otherwise. But union is more than first among equals, absolutely no doubt about it. But I do agree that as per reading a statute or a constitution, you should not read one article out of context or separately. But after having gone through a little bit and interacting with the experience which I got by interacting with some lawyers, what I feel is that Article 280 is one of the most federally worded article in the Constitution. I could be wrong, subject to correction. There it uses distribution of resources. So it does not word it as a pyramidal structure. It words it as a concentric circle expanding. This is a Gandhian perspective. Sriman Narayan writing that Gandhian constitution for India. So the word devolution is a contribution to the economic literature worldwide. So our constitution has been more federal than the economic literature. I was just making a comment on that. I mean, whether union is first among equals, absolutely it is more than, because Article 356, Article 354 enables the union even to suspend the revenue sharing emergencies arrangements when an emergency is declared. We are talking about 41%, 40%. They can say, hell with you, nothing. Only Article 352 has to be invoked, but no, it was not done during 75, 77 also. So this is what are my, again, sharing the doubts.
Dr. Kavita Rao.
Yeah. So there was one question by Dr. Mandal about the role of GST or GST rollout and should it be taken into account. So I didn't factor it in. It should be taken into account for more so in the 16th FC rather than the 15th FC, because 15th FC there was the whole story of the compensation cess, which provided a resource cushion to the state. So in effect, there was a resource cushion and the additional resources available to the union were being transferred back. Part of them was coming through as devolution. So the 15th FC didn't have that much of a question to answer, but 16th FC did have. So the tax to GDP ratio, which historically for the states has been inching up a little at a time, but it has been on the uptrend, has stopped post introduction of GST. So it flattened out introduction of GST. So that is a concern that I guess the Finance Commission should have taken into on board. But the more important issue is also whether all the rate changes that GST Council is implementing undermine the capacity of states to raise resources. So that I think is an additional dimension which every finance commission will find difficult being on board. But there perhaps needs to be a way to think about this. Thank you.
Online, I can't see from here, so somebody can.
Mr. Amit Kumar, you raised your hand. Could you please ask your question? Hello.
Amit Kumar, are you online? Or your hand got raised
Mr.
inadvertently?
Amit Kumar, do you still want to ask question or shall we go ahead? I think it's
Go to
left.
the next.
Yeah, please.
I think if you take the evolution of the share that goes to or the size of the divisible pool from 1950-51, only income tax. Then from the 7th to 10th finance commissions, they recommended 10th, 11th, yeah, all taxes becoming shareable. 10th recommended. Okay, yeah, 10th. So now the question is, today, building on to what Professor Vinod Vyaslu said, only taxes are to be devolved, to be distributed. What about the non-tax? When you raise the question, who will bell the cat? If none of the finance commissions are not interested in doing this particular initiative, who else will do that? And this becomes especially important because if you take, say, for example, the total grants that comes from to the states from the finance commission, if you divide that into FC grants and non-FC grants, the non-FC grants, which can be also called conditional grants, that has almost increased by 68% in 2009 to 82%. So that increase in conditional grants, CSS essentially, that essentially means that that adds to increasing the aggravating the vertical fiscal imbalance because the state are forced to spend on the CSS. So in this context, somehow speakers rightly said the analytical foundations of determining the size of the divisible pool, that is 41%, whatever the share to come vertical thing, should be the vertical fiscal imbalance. That seems to have not really received the attention that it deserved in the analytical minds of the finance committee. So now I do two questions. One is, in this context, in the Indian context, who will bell the cat? Whether this kind of now the non-tax revenue also to be brought under the divisible pool, who will do it?
That's because the constitutional.
Yeah.
Govindra wants to answer.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm asking any specific question, but I'm just giving a couple of clarifications. One is the point that you raised, Mohan, about this distribution versus devolution. No, I mean, it's not an academic thing. I mean, after all, legal language is legal language. But, we use this word devolution because devolution is not done by the center. The determination of development is supposed to be done by an independent body. And that since it's an independent body, it's a division and devolution is between the two units of the. So I don't think we should make much of this thing. And on the issue of inclusion of non-tax revenues and disinvestment proceeds, many states have written this in their memorandum. There's nothing, at least, I mean, we know that in Karnataka, we have written this in the memorandum. We have. So the question is, I think, just as it happened in the case of 10th Finance Commission to include all the taxes, the logic of that was union government was not really focusing on income tax and excise duty, but was on customs duty. Because if 75% of the money of income tax goes to the states, union government loses interest in that. And 40% of the excise duty goes to the states. And that was the question, so there was a lot of literature at the time saying that for reasons of incentive, you can't increase it anymore. And therefore, all the taxes should be, put together. And that's what it was done. So the commission bought that particular, and it was recommendation came from the commission. Now, here again, I think you will have to, it's basically, it's a constitutional issue. You have to amend the constitution if you want to bring in this thing. And the third issue that Dr. Vyasulu raised on this 280 subclause 3 A and B, doesn't say that the commission is required to recommend funds. Okay, it only says, please note the language, measures to augment the consolidated fund of the states to supplement the resources of the panchayat or urban local bodies based on the recommendations of the state finance commissions. Measures could be that you can do the high jumping. You don't, I mean, you can make all sorts of recommendations on how the state government has to raise revenue. However, the commissions decided to start giving grants. And of course, the 13th Finance Commission wanted it to be tied to the previous year's tax collections. That's how it happened. So the basic function there of finding out what has to be done lies with the states. And then states have to make an argument saying that, look, in order to augment our own this thing, you need to do that. So, I mean, it doesn't so facto follow that the Finance Commission has to give the money. I mean, this is, in terms of the constitutional requirement. There is one other thing that I want to say. If you see from the first to the 7th commission, you had a certain division there that tax devolution is predominantly to take care of the vertical imbalance, and the grants were to be predominant to take care of the horizontal imbalance. That is one of the reasons why, up to the 6th Finance Commission, you will see 80 to 90% weight given to the population and 10 to 20% given to collections. I mean, that's basically because I had a series of disagreements and arguments with Dr. Chalaya around the time. I mean, because then 7th Finance Commission came, the whole this division got fixed up because Rajkrishna was a member, and he said 4 different factors, and in the tax devolution itself, he brought in poverty ratio, per capita income, various other things, and then there is a lot of discussion that also we went in on the horizontal issue, which I will not talk about now, but today we cannot make this distinction between vertical and horizontal. I mean, that clarity doesn't exist any longer.
So this one second, this local bodies measures, finally the grants have been given, conditionalities are becoming more and more stifling. They put performance grants and basic grants and finally tied and untied. Now in that untied portion, 20% or more should not be spent on roads. The Union Finance Commission telling a gram panchayat in a far off place that you should do this.
No, the problem there is that many of the states have been doing many of the things I mean, they are forced to really spend money more and more on that. And there is another thing with the State Finance Commission. Yeah, and another thing with the local body grants. I had mentioned it in my earlier writing. You see, most of these conditionalities have to be fulfilled by the state governments for the local bodies to get the money. State governments don't have the interest. As my Guru Chalaya said once, everybody wants decentralization, but only up to his level.
Any of the panelists want to respond? Otherwise, I have one. Okay, Dr. Lahiri, yes, please. You are on mute, sir.
A related point, since local bodies have come up, from the ground level, I won't go into details. I think there may have been a tendency in some of the states, since the union government is giving money for local governments, they may have reduced their contribution. Since Govind said decentralization only up to my level, that may be working, that the panchayats are being told that since the central government is giving the money, take that and be happy with whatever I have. So maybe the next Finance Commission should look at this issue of whether the central government funds are supplanting the state government contributions. Thank you.
I just wanted to make 2 comments. One was what Dr. Joseph raised about the issue of non-tax revenues, etc., being factored in. When I read out the sort of the key thrust of four different finance commissions in the past, they've all taken gross revenue resources of the states into consideration when they are deciding on the entire transfer scheme. It is not just the vertical devolution, but also a total view is taken of the devolution plus grants plus local body grants, all those whatever that what is the other one, disaster management. So when they get a total view, then obviously then the numbers are ascribed to different under different heads. So even the non-tax revenues are factored in. So for example, during 14th FC, the RBI contribution was 10,000 or 15,000 crores, that time. Now it is 2 lakh crores plus. So, I mean, it's the proportion has gone up significantly. So it's up to the FC to really weigh these factors in. Because the thrust, as I said, is that, see, they have argued in a way by giving all those running tables running into pages of devolution since 1950 or 52, whenever the first FC started. The thrust is that 7th and 14th have really destroyed federal finances, in some ways. So we are party to part of the crime. So, there lies the answer also to my the second point I wanted to make was the issue which Dr. Kavita Rao raised about cesses and surcharges, and which is discussed almost everywhere. That, see, I think 7th, sir, if I'm not mistaken, they raised to 40%. One of the grounds was the surcharge.
For 20%, raised to 40%.
Because surcharge, they say, no, the income tax they raised to 85%, saying that the surcharge was 15% during the 1971 war. It had not been reduced. So they said that the states deserve a little step up over what 6th FC gave. So that was the first crime. The second was the 14th FC. Now, 14th FC, I read the relevant para. I somehow got lost here and had flagged it. See, what they say that there are two ways in which it can be addressed. One is this, that you do a constitutional amendment and make it shareable, which, as Dr. Lahiri rightly pointed out, cess or surcharge is a sovereign right. And the second way is this, that you factor this into your entire scheme of resources available for the center and do the transfer. And 14th did factor in an element of extra cesses and surcharges, which was calculated at that time. So those calculations are there. I don't have it right now. So these are the two ways in which previous finance commission has addressed.
We also said that centrally sponsored schemes.
Yeah.
The share, the union government revenue expenditure on the state subjects increased from 15 to 20% between 2005 and 2012.
So, I mean, the FC has that flexibility and the choice if it so chooses to rebalance, you can say, the numbers. Because, and then again, third thing, small point I just wanted to say was that the states, I mean, this is as part of the FC for a while. So the most states still, and when I was around, had argued for 50%. Now, it's not that BJP states did not ask for 50%. So it was, so all states, irrespective of party affiliation, barring one or two, asked for 50%.
They even asked for surcharge.
Yeah, and I think one or two who didn't ask for 50 were very few handful of states which didn't ask for 50%. Now, when you do a back calculation of 50, and take into account whatever element of cess and surcharge which was available till 22, 23, that was the numbers available, audited numbers, minus GST compensation. You come to a number around that, I mean, it is fairly significantly higher than 41. So, no, that's a separate issue, sir. That is,
No, in fact, the 15th Finance Commission itself towards the terminal year of the recommendation. For all the major states, the revenue deficit grants have been reduced to zero. Even 13th recommended, only special. No, that increase the devolution was so much that in their estimation, there was no revenue deficit left.
no.
13. No, I'm not 13. I'm talking about the 7.
7.
Oh, 13 also made a comment.
No.
Make the recommendation regarding revenue that they give a scheme. But that doesn't mean that with that, this revenue grant is going to end.
No. 7, I'll tell you, the factual position is this, that 15th tapered down the revenue deficit grants for all states, including northeastern states, but there were 7 northeastern states which were still eligible for revenue deficit grants in the terminal year. And the grants total something like 14,000 crores in the terminal year for those states. The general category states, if I can use this term, is like Kerala, Punjab, West Bengal, etc., who had been recipients earlier, were tapered out. Sharp tapering was there, and I think by the 3rd year or so they ended. Punjab was 4th year, it ended. See, just let me finish, then I'll give you all the time because we are still 15 minutes to go. See, the problem which the FC has to analyze is that the thing which Dr. Joseph said, vertical imbalance. Now, why did Tamil Nadu get a grant? Tamil Nadu is one of the highest earning states in the country in terms of performance. Because their devolution fell so sharply, Their devolution share fell from 4.9 or thereabouts to 4%, So there's an imbalance in their system. You have a state like Maharashtra, where you see the fiscal deficit, it is well below 3%, but they are always in revenue deficit. So, I mean, these are the peculiarities, and they are not fiscally stressed state. Sir, just give me 1 second. You can argue. So that's a separate question. The point which I am trying to say is this, that in reality, you have deprived these 7 or 8 northeastern states of revenue deficit grants. Their share of devolution has also fallen. The third whammy for them, no, it's not a double whammy, it's a third whammy, is that nominal transfers have declined this year as part of state share of tax. Or they have lost far more than what anybody could have expected. So this is a stress which I guess we'll have to face. Yes. Now, sir, you and the madam behind you.
About any particular state. I'm speaking about the possibility of some states getting into a situation of revenue deficit crisis.
Targeting revenue deficits.
Sir, I have cited 7 cases where they will be in crisis because their nominal shares have fallen so dramatically.
I have a small thing to add on to that.
Not there. Let me just.
No, one sentence. I'll just add on to what he said, because revenue deficit grant, the 16th FC, I want a comment from you, sir. 16th FC says that even after these grants were given, to make it a cushion, that cushion has not worked. Your comments on that. 16th FC states that revenue deficit grants were given for a soft landing to act as a cushion. But somehow the states which received the revenue deficit grant were still left with revenue deficits, and they have blamed they have used this stochastic frontier method and tax efficiency.
Where is the result given? Result is not given of the stochastic frontier.
They have given some results. They have given in the horizontal chapter. They have given some graphs. They have given. I have seen that. So your comment on that, sir?
It is a graph is not a data.
About GST, we have made some demand. About GST, we have arrived at some conclusions. GST revenue is not really growing. And there are such possibilities which may land up some states in revenue deficit. In that case, what is the remedy? Because Finance Commission is saying that year after, you don't have this window at all.
The fiscal roadmap, they have not targeted zero revenue deficit. You can have 3% revenue deficit. What do you think fiscal deficit?
Can I make a comment?
Yes. After Dr. Mandal, you can.
No, I was struck when you said that many of these states had been asking for 50%. You know, Ashok made that remark that if the center collects 2/3 and spends 1/3, and the reverse in the case of states, it's not rocket science that the devolution would be roughly about 50%. But having said that, it is still what the state's asking. I think they're still being conservative because they're asking only 50% of the shareable pool. But what we have been discussing now is a much vaster pool of resources the center has, which I think was raising.
That's a bonus. CSS.
So anyway.
Yes, Madam, your
Okay,
point, you have been.
Yeah,
getting
sir,
very-
I have 3 points. One point is on in 25-26, many more than 15 states is having revenue deficit. So why they haven't considered that point? That's one thing. Earlier, last 2-3 years also, it is like that only. When analyzing the state finances, we found that. The second question is regarding the grants in aid. Actually, whatever revenue central government is collecting, except the share of taxes to states, going to the consolidated fund of India. From that only the grants in aid is coming. So if they increase the grants in aid, this problem would have been solved. Now, even in 16th Finance Commission also, there is a decline in the grants in aid. That consolidated amount, they could have increased, but that doesn't happen. Another point is that many of the northeastern states and many other states, their tax share and also grants in aid reduced. So in this context, within these 5 years, which way we will address this issue? We are telling that there is a reduction, but in which way we will address the issue, whether from another CSS or existing CSS from revamping or any other solution to that. These are my points.
Interesting questions, but I can't answer why they have not given. They have explained the reason in their But yes, what is see the answer also lies in the fact that something which they have lamented in the report is that the fiscal responsibility legislations of states are all undergoing different changes and there's no uniformity. Well, that is because at different times, different types of roadmaps have been indicated by the Finance Commission. Now, for example, 14th did not make any changes except they gave some incentives which certain states incorporated in their Then Government of India changed its FRBM in 2017-18 after report by NK Singh committee where they gave a debt GDP target of 40-20. There they have done away with revenue deficit grants, revenue deficit as a target, and they made it into a law through a Finance Act amendment. Now, many states saw that as a window. So they also changed and said that we have eliminated revenue deficit completely. They changed their debt targets post 15th FC because 15th FC gave a revised roadmap. There was post-COVID, there was a revised roadmap which changed the thing. So as a result, what you have today is a mishmash of all types of things. And even 15th did not stick to 3%. It was a flexible target for 2 years. And then you have that 5%, 0.5% for power sector borrowing. So essentially you have several types of FRBM laws which are prevailing in the states. So now if some uniformity has to be brought about, something has to be suggested, because here again they have not suggested revenue deficit as a target. So if, let us say, Kerala has a revenue deficit problem, then they'll continue to have revenue deficit and say, I'm well within my FRL. I mean, technically you can say, but a problem with a smaller state is that size of GSDP is so small that their borrowing itself will not be enough to cover the gap which exists in their on the revenue account. So, I mean, this is a problem which one has to see how it is tackled, because today the government of India also does not have any source of support to the states other than through FC grants mechanism. Earlier planning commission was there, so advanced plan assistance, ad hoc plan assistance, all those options existed, but today they are not there. So, sir, you please have your last. So, I mean, these are the things which are there, and
You mean to say that the states are not better off there, if not there?
no, I'm not making any comment, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Chairman,
No,
I
no.
don't make
In
comment.
fact,
Some are better, some are worse.
no, your words, that in fact answers your question. Even when they run this sort of, there will be some mechanism, they will have to, something will come out. That's all.
No,
Yeah.
I think there is, to say the least, the states are, I don't want to say better off or worse off. I think the world itself is becoming uncertain, and the states are also becoming more uncertain. There's no definitiveness in what you can expect. What you can expect.
The point is, when the 15th Finance Commission report itself came, I had mentioned this. That, Kerala was one of the states, which had a very high revenue deficit grant. But then it was tapering off. And they should have seen that happening. And I had mentioned that as you go further, we are going to be in difficult, you start tightening now, seeing how we should really manage. So we business as usual went on. And when the business as usual goes on, it's a hard budget constraint. There is no other way you can handle this unless you're. So it hasn't come as a complete surprise. It has not come as a complete surprise. I'm not in sympathy with what the Finance Commission did. I'm not in sympathy with that. But then I think there has to be a lot more lessons to be learned. Absolutely. Can I thank you, sir?
Thank
you. Your final word.
No, I just want to thank you.
I think
We can conclude the session. Dr. Joseph.
Thank you very much. I think we must thank the chair and the four panelists. Let's give them a big hand. And there is a memento, and the memento cannot be given online. So the offline, and it will reach you. Don't worry about it. It will reach you. Of course, with a lag, just like. Okay. So so may the chairman please give a memento to your panelists.
Yeah.
This is to Professor Vinod Vyas.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, could you please give me
send it to Dr.
Yeah.
You have to.
With pleasure. All online will be held offline.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.